Welcome to The Explainer. Right now, there's a massive global conflict underway. But this war isn't being fought with soldiers. It's being fought with factories and microchips. Today, we're going to unpack this huge push to bring manufacturing back home and figure out what it's all costing us.
Okay, here's a question for you. What in the world connects the price of gold to the future of Taiwan? It sounds like a strange riddle, I know. But by the end of this, you'll see how a single, powerful trend ties these two completely different worlds together.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with a quick look at today's economy. Then we'll dive into this big trend called onshoring. After that, we're going to zero in on the fight for computer chips and then zoom back out to see what this means for the rest of the world.
So, to really get a handle on where all this is headed, let's do a little time travel. Let's imagine it's August 2025. This is kind of what the economic scene could look like. Now, just take a look at these numbers. You've got oil and currencies doing their usual dance, but look at gold. Wow, a price floating around $3,400 an ounce. That screams economic uncertainty. It tells you investors are getting really nervous, and when they're nervous, they run to safe assets. That feeling, that nervousness, is a huge piece of this puzzle.
And you can see this weirdness all over the place. On one hand, the tech industry is on fire, just desperate for more and more computing power. Pharma, it's chugging along pretty steady. But then you see the housing market is hitting the brakes. So it's not a simple boom or bust story. It's this really tangled, confusing mix of signals.
Which, of course, brings us to the real question. What is causing this strange combination of red-hot demand in some places, but also this general feeling of risk and volatility? Well, the answer comes down to a massive shift in policy. We are talking about the great onshoring. And look, this is not just some catchy buzzword. It's a multi-trillion-dollar reshuffling of how the entire global economy works. So what is it? It's actually a really simple idea, but the consequences are huge. For decades, all we heard about was offshoring, sending jobs and factories overseas where it was cheaper. Well, onshoring is the complete reverse. It's a very deliberate effort to pull those critical industries back home. And from the administration's point of view, this is a central piece of their whole economic plan. A White House document from June 2025 actually tracks this, highlighting these big commitments from companies like IBM, the Taiwanese chip-making giant TSMC, and the pharma company Sanofi to build up their operations in the U.S. So why is this happening now? Well, it's not just one thing. It's a mix of powerful forces all hitting at once. You've got governments desperate to secure their supply chains for critical goods. You've got companies trying to get around painful tariffs. And all of this is happening while everyone's trying to navigate some really tricky geopolitical tensions. It's a perfect storm, really. And there's no better example of this whole trend than the fight over semiconductors. I mean, these tiny little chips power literally everything in our modern lives. And all of a sudden, where they get made has become a top issue of national security. And this is a really big deal. For years, the most advanced, most powerful chip manufacturing had all moved to Asia, mostly to Taiwan. The fact that the newest generation of chips are now rolling off production lines right here in the United States, that's nothing short of a historic shift. So how did we even get here? Well, first, you had the big policy push from the government, a mix of juicy incentives and not-so-juicy tariffs. That was enough to get Taiwanese companies, especially the industry leader TSMC, to make huge investments in the U.S. That led directly to a brand-new state-of-the-art factory in Phoenix, Arizona. And now, American tech giants like NVDA and AMD are actually making their most advanced chips there. And boom, this brings us full circle, right back to where we started. This whole push for onshoring, which is really a reaction to tariffs and geopolitical risk, it creates exactly that kind of economic friction and uncertainty we were talking about. And that uncertainty is what sends investors flocking to safe havens, driving up the price of things like gold. See? It's all connected. But this whole movement, it does a lot more than just move the price of gold. It creates these massive geopolitical shockwaves. And ground zero for those shockwaves is the longtime center of the chip-making world, Taiwan. For decades, everyone talked about Taiwan's Silicon Shield. The thinking was pretty simple.
The world, especially the United States, needed Taiwan's chips so badly that it would always defend the island. But now, as some of that supercritical production moves to Arizona, you have to ask, does that shield get weaker? Some experts are now saying that Taiwan's value is changing. It's becoming less about the factories on the island and more about its absolutely critical location in the Pacific.
But let's be clear, you should not think of Taiwan as just a passive pawn in all of this. Its companies are making some really smart strategic moves. By building factories in the U.S., they're making sure they don't get shut out of the massive American market by tariffs. It's a very proactive play to survive in a new world. And they're doing all this while still keeping their most advanced work at home.
So when you just take a step back and look at the whole picture, you can finally see it. The price of gold, the tech boom, the housing market, the future of Taiwan, these aren't just random, separate headlines. They are all just different symptoms of one single incredibly powerful story, the great global reshuffling of the industries that matter most. And that leaves us with one last massive question. As all these countries try to pull their most critical industries closer to home, are we watching the beginning of the end for the kind of interconnected global economy we've known for decades? That's the question that might just define our future.